Hi everybody, this is Bev Grey. I wanted to show you how you can use the story card die and your scraps to make an interesting project. The project that I made is this journaling card, but you could use this same technique to make a greeting card or any number of projects. I started with a rounded rectangle 3x4-inch card as the base. For this project, I'm going to be using a scrap of orange patterned paper. And I'm using the story card die base. Now the first step is to position the story card die over whatever part of that piece of patterned paper you want to use. And as you can see here, I'm having a hard time making up my mind. But eventually I decide that I want that part that shows some of the butterflies. Now I'm using some painter's tape that's not very sticky to hold the die in place while I go cut it. Now once you've run that through your die cutting machine, you'll find that you have part of that die cut out of the patterned scrap. Now I'm just peeling back the masking tape, the painter's tape, a little bit slowly to make sure that I don't peel off any of that patterned paper. And you'll see that this is a great way to use your scraps. Now I've got my scrap and I've got the white card base, and I just want to show you one of the things I do when I'm designing something, and that is to lay everything on the project and get a feel for whether the sizing's right. So I'm going to be using the journaling lines from the Well-Worn Journal stamp set. And I know that I want it to be over to that one side, and on the other side I want to use a parenthesis. And as you can see, that scrap's a little long to fit it all in. And then I want to die cut the word said out of that top scrap part. So once I've set up this design, I just make a little mark where I know I want to cut it off. So I'm just using my micron pen and making a little mark there. Now while I've got it all laid out, I might as well just go ahead and pick up that stamp. So you'll see me futzing around with it here while I'm making up my mind what I'm going to do next. And what I decide to do is to get out my clear block and get that stamp onto that clear block so that it's positioned and ready to stamp in the next step. So I'm lining it up so that the end of the block is down at the bottom of that card and the stamp is perfectly placed to be stamped at a later date. Now I'm taking that scrap with the little mark on it and I'm lining it up on my trimmer and just going to trim off that extra stuff that I'm not going to need. And I'm not being too picky here, just making sure I get close to that mark. Now once I have that die cut out, I'm just looking at it again to make sure that I got enough cut off and making sure that the parenthesis and the lines will still fit in the space the way that I expected them to, and it looks pretty good. So now I need to die cut out the word said from that scrap. Now I don't know if you can see this, but I'm using a cutting mat that's a little warped. So I decided that I should flip it over so that it's humped up like a little hill instead of down like a valley. And then I position the word said on it and use some masking tape to adhere it down. Now once you've cut out the word from that orange pattern paper, there are a couple things you need to know. And that is that you're going to need all the little pieces that are going to come out of the letters. So the A, the center of the A, has already fallen out there, but the S and the D pieces are still stuck in the die. So this is where I go and get a little corsage pin or something that I can poke out those little pieces and just pop them out. Now the next step is to adhere that scrap of orange cardstock down. Now I just grabbed the nearest adhesive gun and it happened to be the huge ATG gun, which is way overkill for this, but that's okay, it'll do the job. And once you have that adhered onto the card base, the next step is going to be to fill in those little parts that were part of the letters. And it's going to make it a lot more readable. Now you can see here that I started off just using my fingers and quickly figured out that my fingers just weren't doing the job. So I went and got that same little corsage pin and started using it to adjust how the center of the A would fit. Then I picked up another piece from the D and made sure that I've got it, nearly lost it, but once I get it onto the project, that it will go into the middle of the D. Then I noticed that I'm missing the middle of the S, and I realized that it was still stuck in the die, so I took the die and used the stick pin to pop it out, and now I've got all the pieces of the letters that need to go back in to make this very readable. Now, if you haven't started thinking about it, you're probably wondering, well, how is she going to adhere all that down? And I'll tell you that for these little pieces like this, my preferred way of adhering things down is with a glue pen. So I'm just picking that back up and then putting down just a little dot from the glue pen onto the project. And now I'm going to use the stick pin to slide it over and get it positioned right where that adhesive is. And I do that for the other two pieces of the letters too. Once you have all the pieces put back in place in those letters, you're going to want to finish off your card. And the way I'm going to finish mine off is to use the Deep Lagoon VersaFine ink to add the journaling lines. And I'm going to set them off to the side so that the parenthesis will fit. So here you can see I'm laying the parenthesis down on the project so I know exactly where those journaling lines need to be stamped. And again, I'm lining up the bottom of the block, looking at where the stamped image is going to go, and that lets me make sure that those lines are right where I want them to be. Now, I also need to adhere that parenthesis, and since I'm using that glue pen, figured I might as well use it on the parenthesis too. You could also use something like the Xyron little create a sticker box to get the adhesive onto this parenthesis too. It works really well for pieces like this that are kind of small. And then I just adhere it off to the side of those journaling lines. Now to finish this little card, I decided that I wanted to add some bling. So I'm just using some Queen & Company bling, and I wanted to bring the blue that I used in the journaling lines up to the top too and repeat it in another area of my project. So I'm using this turquoisey blue color to add up at the top with the bling. And I really think that I'm going to like this project. I think it'll look great in a pocket page, or it could work on a traditional layout too. If you'd like to see more project how-to videos, visit our YouTube channel or sign up for our newsletter. Thank you.